bottom right is an interesting situation. These are kind of the ugly spots that you get into it in 3-bet pots sometimes. If I bet, I'm in a really shitty situation if he raises me, because he's going to be getting it in with a lot of just like 10-9 with a diamond or something like that. Or, I mean, that's got great equity against me, but even like Jack-10 with a diamond, which has, I'm flipping with. And it's not a great situation. And at the same time, you might have some hands like pocket 8s or ace-7 or flush or, 5-4, blah, blah, blah. So basically I'm doing pretty badly against his range, but not feeling super great about bet folding. And at the same time, if I bet, it's a spot where I'm just going to have to check the turn a ton of the time. Pretty much every turn I'll have to check to him, and it'll be really tough to proceed from there. So I don't mind just trying to basically play pot control. And it's worth a call on the flop, but there are going to be a lot of sticky situations on the turn. And this is probably just a fold. Top right, he raised me on a deuce turn after he checked back to flop. Pretty suspicious of what he had, but I decided to just let him have it with my gut shot. This is a spot where a lot of players, and good players included, will check back even like, the queen of diamonds or king of diamonds in sLiikz shoes. So it's actually a spot where you can justify making some really light call downs because their value betting range is going to be really narrow, but they're just going to think, oh, it's a good spot to bluff if he doesn't have a diamond till insta-fold. Not a great turn on the top right. I don't check back, top pair mid kicker as a standard, but I certainly like mixing it up against good players. And it's not a hand that I'm going to be able to bet 3 streets for value for the most part. So he overbets the river, and I decide to snap call him. I think it's close, but I just don't see him checking better than a queen that often on the turn. Although on an ace, he might decide that I'm going to be betting it a fair bit. And he might be going for a check raise. But I think he could also be betting some worse queens if he has some queen X suited or something like that. And he can certainly be bluffing. I mean, I look pretty weak at this point, so it's close. I think it's less likely he's bluffing because of the earlier hand. I think, regardless of what he had, he's going to think I'm more likely to call him in this spot because I folded earlier, and I might be suspicious. So I think it's less likely he's bluffing, and he wasn't this time. He had king jack, and I'm very surprised he didn't 3-bet that. So we're going to have to be careful and try and be sure that his value betting, or that his 3-betting range is legitimate. So far, we saw 9-3 suited get 3-bet and king jack suited get flatted. So it's very possible he's got a very bluff heavy 3-betting range. Top left is another situation where, you get trips, you turn trips, but I don't think I'm getting paid off on that turn very often because he won't expect me to bluff. So I decided to check it back and get kind of tricksy, and hope that by checking it back and betting the river, it'll look a bit bluffier, although that's debatable. Bottom left, I decide to just raise him and go with it for 100 big blinds. It's certainly possible he has a better hand if we decide to get it in, but I think he'll have a lot of draws or maybe some ace-7s or pocket 8s or something like that. So I think I'm doing well enough against his range to justify raising and getting it in. And top left, I opt to just shove it in. I think that it's not going to change his calling range too much, and it's possible that he just gets suspicious because of the fact that I check back the turn, and therefore I shouldn't have an ace in his eyes, and what else would I be overbetting for value like that? But it's close. I think he's good enough to realize that I could check back an ace here, and can fold. But I don't think that betting like 60 or anything like that is going to look bluff here, so I don't really know. I don't think his calling frequency, I don't think he's going to call super often to start off with, and I don't think his calling frequency changes all that much based on how much I bet. So I think it's not too bad a spot to put an overbet in. So I check call him with ace-4 on the bottom left, which is kind of dicey. Against an aggressive player who's going to barrel you a lot, you've got to tighten up your flop calling range out of position because you're just not going to be able to show it down nearly as easily as you would be against some more passive players. But I decided to call in this situation, and I decided to turn my hand into a bluff, which I'm going to do a few times throughout the video actually. And I don't mind it, just because there's nothing for me to be bluffing with in his eyes, and therefore it's possible he's got like a 2 or 3 pocket 4s, or maybe he was betting like ace-queen for value on the flop or anything like that, and I think all of those hands are going to fold. So I certainly have the best hand some of the time, but I think it's still worth a bet just because I can't imagine him calling me pretty much ever.